Conservative MP, former Cabinet Minister, Brandon Lewis. Really looking forward to this interview. The first thing I want to say is, you look very slim from the Brandon Lewis that I last saw. What's going on here?
Well, thank you. Yeah, occasionally when you see the stories and they use an old photo, and I've had friends message me a few times, go, "Oh, you should correct that story." I'm like, "No, I want to correct the photo." It's the story you get used to as a politician. Yeah, no, I had one of those moments a couple of years ago when I hit 50 and I had a medical and just thought everything was fine, but it's either now or never. And I've always been big, and I just thought, right, I'm gonna go for it, and so decided to lose some weight.
How much have you lost?
About 4.5 stone from where I was. Yeah.
Wow. And you said something interesting there. You've always been big. So is this the first time in your life that you're slim?
Yeah, it's probably the first time in my life, certainly as long as I can remember, that I've been probably around the weight I should be, rather than being. I was always big at school and everything. Yeah, so it's I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
Does it feel good?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I feel a lot better. Yeah.
Most important thing to cut out if anybody's watching and wants to lose a pound or two, not 4.5 stone might be a bit much.
For me, it was chocolate. I had a real bad chocolate addiction, and all those starchy junk food things you shouldn't eat. So my joke to myself was always just stop eating the things you like. But I've now got just eating healthier and doing a bit of training, and but chocolate was my main problem. Yeah. You
said that you'd always, as long as you can remember, you've always been big. Last year, you just did a tweet on social media revealing that you were bullied at school for your weight and dyslexia. We're going to talk about both of those in turn. You didn't go into any details on the tweet. What was the nature of the bullying you were subjected to?
It varied when I was at school, actually. I mean, mainly just being fat. You got comments and a bit of abuse being fat. Also, when I was at school, my dad had quite a successful business, and he sold his business. That got attention. I guess looking back, jealousy kind of thing. But yeah, it was mainly over being fat. I was bullied.
What was so you were name called, basically?
Yeah, and you get used to being the last one picked for a team or whatever, because obviously you weren't fit enough to go running. No, but it was, I mean, what the weird thing for me was, I've always said, at the time I didn't particularly register that it was having an impact. I mean, I knew I was being bullied, and it's never nice. But I also had some good friends at school as well, so I wasn't somebody who didn't have friends. But what it did do was it kind of changed my approach to things. So you become a bit hardened. What people say about you, if you know it's not true, starts to not impact, which is quite useful as a politician. If you can go to bed at night confident that you've done the right thing for the right reason, then actually somebody name calling in whatever format, you harden up to that. So in that sense, I always took the view it probably was not unhelpful, and I've tried to see it in that sort of positive way.
Did it impact you as a child? You were a teenager when it was most prevalent, is that right? Did it impact on your mental health as a child? Do you remember?
I don't think so. I mean, it's hard sort of looking back. Yeah. At the time, I don't remember being particularly conscious of that. It probably gives you that almost for part of your life. I suppose you question everything in terms of almost the imposter syndrome kind of thing. But I just found it made me just work a bit harder. I wanted to succeed, so you become a bit more focused, a bit more determined, a bit more driven. Don't give up on things just because somebody has a different view to you. That's how life goes. So in a sense, as I say, I've always tried to think of it in a positive sense, that it just made me it gave me a bit of thicker skin and stronger skin, which has hopefully stood me in some stead.
How did it stop? Or did you just leave school and?
I left school. I mean, yeah, it always continued. But yeah, you just get a bit older and it becomes water off a duck's back. So.
Is there bullying in politics?
Look, I've never been subject to it or seen it in politics. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, and obviously there's been some stories over the last year or so. My experience has always been, I remember a very old friend of my dad's always said, treat others how you wish to be treated, and particularly on your way up, because you're going to meet people when you're on your way down, and we all go up, we all have periods where we go down. So I've tried to always work with people in the format that I'd like them to work with me, and try and work on making sure that you're building a team in a positive way, because one of the things I learned in government early from people I'd worked with was whether you're a civil servant, special advisor, a junior minister, a senior minister, you only deliver if you work together as a team. So I've always tried to try and have that approach.
I just wonder if you, with your own experience, if you can see particular character traits in bullies. Is there something about some people that make them engage in this horrible behaviour?
Yeah, and one thing I've never spoken about is my daughter got bullied badly at school as well. And one of the things and it was probably more when it happened to her, it sort of reminded me of what happened to me. And I think actually there's an element of jealousy. People sort of, whether it's real or imagined, but they're jealous of what they perceive to be somebody else's life or experience. And those people themselves having maybe an inferiority complex, and their way of dealing with it is to actually go and victimise others. So I think when you see bullying, generally the weakness is in the bully. And once you can get your mind straight about that, somebody said to me a long time ago, the only person who has control over how you feel ultimately is you. Once you recognise that, then whether it's a bully or anything else, it's their problem, not yours.
And if any parents are watching and they fear that their children are being bullied at school, any words of advice?
Yeah, I mean, it's the hardest thing to deal with. Much worse than if you're being bullied yourself, because it's your kids and you want to do anything for them. My wife was brilliant and dealt with most of the situation we went through. And I would say you've got to just be there and give support to your kids. It's really hard now. I mean, when I was at school, the advantage I had was if I was bullied during the day, and it was generally verbal stuff. Yeah. It was never, because I was big, nobody physically ever tried anything. But you got to go home, and at 4 o'clock you left school, you went home and you're in a safe environment. Of course, today, when you leave school with social and digital media, it continues, arguably it gets worse. And I think being on top of that and being supportive around that is really key. The kids knowing that you as a family are a safe place is probably the best thing you can do. And don't be afraid of dealing with it, particularly if it's at school. I think some schools still really struggle with how to deal with it. My experience, both myself and my daughter, was not good. Schools just didn't know how to deal with it. So the family has to step up and play that role and be there for the kids.
You also revealed that you're dyslexic.
Yes.
When was your condition recognised?
It wasn't recognised actually until I was at university.
Really? You went to a fee-paying school and
never got picked up.
Nothing.
So the reason I went to a fee-paying school is when I was very young. I was about 11 or something like that. I was in a state school, and the teachers, because I wasn't doing very well, made me. I had one of those experiences where they sat your desk in front of right on the blackboard, so my nose was kind of touching it. It was a blackboard back then. Because if you can't read the blackboard, then we'll stick you that close. And it was that kind of thing. And my parents took the decision to take me out of that school and put me into a fee-paying school. But it was I'd always been very bad at spelling. Spelling was my real issue. And it was when I was at university, a friend who was in education was chatting to my wife, and she was saying that spelling's still bad. I've got a kind of eidetic memory, so I did quite well at law, so I could memorise the cases. And she just said, I think you might have been dyslexic. So out of curiosity, I then went and did a test. And the test showed that I was dyslexic. And what they said to me was, if we'd have tested you at 10, 11, 12, you'd have probably been quite severe. And what I had developed for myself, the methodology of how I dealt with it, was what they teach. So effectively mind mapping, blocking for numbers. So my brain, and apparently people who do go into further education, the brain finds ways around these things, which is what I turned out I'd done. But yeah, I'd been dyslexic. So I'd had a bit of a not bullying, but comments at school from teachers often, and it turns out I was actually dyslexic. I couldn't spell and struggled with that kind of thing.
Gosh.
So,
and that must have felt like being bullying in a different way.
A little bit. But spell check's been a godsend for people like me. So predictive text is a threat, but spell check is,
Has it affected your working life, being dyslexic?
I don't think so. I mean, I ended up, I'm told it's probably through the dyslexia I sort of developed a sort of semi-photographic memory, which probably helped, particularly when you're doing speeches and trying to remember figures at the dispatch box, things like that. But no, I think your brain just finds ways to work around some of these challenges. So, and again, I suppose in a way, dealing with something like that, finding ways around it, gives you that determination to get on and get things done. It probably drove my desire to go to. I mean, I went to work from school, then I went back to university. And I think it was probably because at school I was never seen as very bright, probably because of the dyslexia, that when I went to university I was then determined to do it. And I did a degree and did a master's and when I qualified as a barrister is probably partly to prove that I can do this.
Just to close on, just a couple of reflections, thoughts, because you came in 2010. You were a minister very soon afterwards, a couple of years afterwards. You spent the last 5 years in the cabinet, so top table for most of your political career. You're on the back benches. How is it?
Having control of my diary for the first time in 10 years is very, very enjoyable, I have to say. After lots of cancelled nights out with my wife and cancelled family holidays, actually being able to plan and do things is quite nice. But look, I was very fortunate. I had 10 years, really interesting jobs all the way through, very much enjoyed everything I did. And a phenomenal experience and a chance in various jobs to do things that hopefully make a difference. Obviously, you want to think you made a positive difference and deliver things. I've always focused on making sure in every department you get something done and delivered that you can look back on. So now I'm very pleased and proud of what I've done and quite enjoying life at the moment.
Good. And one of the things that I want people to understand is it's not just about running the department. You're round the top table. You're sat there with the Prime Minister. You can make your voice heard and give your advice. If you were back round that top table, there was one thing that you could say, we should focus on this more. Is there anything?
I always say it's very dangerous to cycle. When you're not at the table, you're not, part of what they're doing.
You don't have to go there. I'm tempting you.
But what I will say is one of the things I think it takes a bit of time to remember and to learn, actually. One of the benefits of having a long time as a junior minister, middle ranking, before becoming to the top table, is even when you're at the table, is remembering that, yes, you've got your area and you become very laser focused on that. It's almost exclusion of everything else to really focus on it. But actually, when you're at the table for your wider views, and actually not to be afraid on an area that's outside of your department to have an input if you feel you've got a relevant input. I think that's one of the main things to remember is you are part of that team and therefore you have a right and actually a role to contribute to the wider discussion. And look, at the moment, my general comment is we've got to be focused on making sure we're delivering for people. And as a government, that we're doing things where the public can see the government is focused on it, it's empathetic to it, and it's going to get things done. Because I think the public want to see their government, whatever colour the government happens to be, is focused on the issues they care about and has got ideas to deal with those issues.
Brandon Lewis, you haven't really done a sit-down since you've left
No, I haven't, no.
the Cabinet. I'm really thankful that you decided to do it with us at GB News, and I loved our chat. I really did.
No, it's been a pleasure. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.